suspended dangerous chemicals and carcinogens. And mind you, in 2021, the Johns Hopkins University has identified 2,000 chemicals already in that aerosolized cloud from the e-cigarettes.
You're listening to Teen Talks, breaking free from tobacco and nicotine grip, a podcast brought to you by the Asia Pacific Learning Collaborative Network on tobacco and nicotine control. In this episode, Vibe Check, e-cigarettes unwrapped.
Vaping. I'm pretty sure you've heard of this word countless of times, be it from friends, families, coworkers, or just from random passerbys on the street. Quickly becoming a popular trend, especially in the younger generations, much attention and discussion has been given to vaping and e-cigarettes. The scientific community, government organizations, private companies, and the general population are all involved in this growing trend as it crosses over topics regarding health and safety, sales and economic viability, regulations, general use, and its implications for society currently. I'm Jonathan Gonzalez, a youth advocate for tobacco and nicotine control and regulation from the Philippines, and currently a third year medical student from the University of the Philippines College of Medicine.
And I'm Eldis. I'm currently leading a group of medical students and high schoolers in developing a social media platform called the Smartens Project, which aims to inform Indonesian youth about smoking, vaping, and how they are related to mental health.
Hi, I'm Ansor Ablufat. You can call me Ansor, and I'm a medical researcher from Indonesia.
And joining us today for this episode of Teen Talks on Tobacco and Nicotine Control is Dr. Riz Gonzalez, a pediatrician from the Philippines who is the chairperson of the Philippine Pediatric Society Tobacco and Nicotine Control Advocacy Group, a child health advocate leading the charge on movements to push for tobacco and nicotine regulation and control in our country, and the chair of the Asia Pacific Collaborative Learning Network on Tobacco and Nicotine Control since 2021.
And from Indonesia, we have Dr. Bernie Medisa, a developmental behavioral pediatrician who is concerned in youth and adolescent growth and development, including how tobacco and e-cigarette affect their growth. So Dr. Bernie and Dr. Ansor formed a research team which focus on developing a tobacco prevention programs for youth in Indonesia. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Riz, Dr. Bernie, and Dr. Ansor.
Thank you, Joe, Ansher, and Eldest. It is true today that it's not only cigarette smoking that we should be aware and fighting against. Vaping and e-cigarettes are taking the world by storm. And what's even worse now is that due to the presence of social media, the influencers and peer pressure, and that of the tobacco industry interference is greater than ever with regards to vaping or the e-cigarettes. In the Philippines, the latest Global Youth Tobacco Survey is a little grim. In 2019, it has risen remarkably to 14% of our youth. That's actually very scary. Dr. Bernie, do you have anything to say about this?
Yes, Dr. Chris. Hello, I'm Betty Medisa. I'm pediatrician, subspecializing in developmental behavioral community pediatrics from University of Indonesia. And like this mentioned, I and Dr. Ansor, together with a team of researchers, we conducted studies about e-cigarette advertisement literacy and e-cigarette, and we were developing a prevention program for youth in Indonesia. Well, in Indonesia, the latest Global Youth Tobacco Survey in 2019 showed that 19.2% of students use any tobacco products, and about 1% of students use smokeless tobacco, including vapes in young. So for today's episodes, we will be talking about what are considered e-cigarettes, who are the companies behind of this program, and correcting some common misconceptions regarding these products.
That being said, doctors, I myself am more familiar with what classifies as an e-cigarette, but maybe for our listeners at home who may be not as familiar, would you care to enlighten us exactly what is referred to when we say something like e-cigarettes?
Okay, Jonathan, eldest, and unsure. Before it used to be cigarettes, but now we have the novel products, we call it lumply as electronic smoking devices. There are two, the e-cigarettes and that of the heated tobacco products. I'll tell you about electronic cigarettes. Electronic cigarettes is actually composed of a device and that of the e-liquid. One cannot work without the other. The electronic device has the cartridge, it has the battery, and the coils for heating. The e-liquid is composed of the propylene glycol, the vegetable glycerin, the liquid nicotine, and that of the flavoring. Now mix it. Using the coil, it produces the vapor, but I don't call it appropriately as vapor. It should be called an aerosol because with the heating of this e-liquid in the device, it produces gaseous form with suspended particles, suspended dangerous chemicals and carcinogens. And mind you, in 2021, the Johns Hopkins University has identified 2,000 chemicals already in that aerosolized cloud from the e-cigarettes. Now, the most popular in this generation is actually the pod shape. It has evolved from that simple pen to that of the USB, from a sleek pen to a big tank to the sleek, cute, concealable USB device. Mind you, this has gained popularity among the young, and that is actually very scary because they can conceal that. Dr. Bernie, can you elucidate for the other ESD, which is the heated tobacco product?
Actually, now that you mention it, Dr. Riz, I've been seeing more creative looking vapes nowadays, and some even disguising themselves as part of fashion wear or worn with a lanyard together with their ID laces, dangling on their neck for convenience.
Well, I actually noticed that too. I see young people everywhere just casually wear that USB like device around their neck and they just casually puff it in public places.
Yeah, if I may cut it, we can see from these designs that it is clearly targeting youth. Now, you also asked about heated tobacco products or HTPs. They, on the other hand, are another categories of electronic smoking devices that use an electronic device to heat specially prepared tobacco sticks or loose tobacco leaves called heat sticks. These products are also release an aerosol with a high amount of fine and ultrafine particles. They are indeed a tobacco product in micronized form using a hearing device like a sleek smartphone. And do remember that the main aim of ESDs are still to deliver nicotine as fast as and as much as possible to the body, especially the brain. And we know that nicotine is very addictive chemical. Note that the vape aerosol also contain ultrafine particles that can be inhaled deep into the lungs, in addition to flavoring such as diacetyl or a chemical linked to a serious lung disease, volatile organic, cancer-causing chemicals, impurities or heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, which may also be cancer-causing.
That would make perfect sense as to why people would find it extremely difficult to quit, since e cigarettes have even higher concentrations of nicotine compared to the traditional stick.
Yes, across the world, especially the Asia Pacific region. That's where we are. Electronic smoking devices are gaining popularity, especially among the youth. We are in the lower middle income countries, and yet the target of this industry. Why? Because we have lots of youth in our region. It is imperative to act and unmask the truth behind these addictive products and their harms. It is also alarming that e-cigarettes have been also used to deliver marijuana, methamphetamine, and other illicit drugs and substances. And several studies have shown that the use of e-cigarettes is strongly linked to alcohol use. The risk taking behaviors are inherent in the young, with their still developing executive functions of the brain, makes this age group vulnerable to these substances. Remember Dr. Tiagar's episode on the nicotine and the teen brain? That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Reese. Actually, in one of our provinces in Indonesia in 2020, there was a liquid e-cigarette product that was investigated by the police, and in the end, it was revealed that it contained synthetic marijuana. So it shows us how these products, especially in our country in Indonesia, are not regulated at all. So who knows what these products truly contain?
Yeah, actually, thinking about that now, that is pretty scary because you can't really tell what's in it. But is there any truth behind the notion that vaping is a better alternative compared to smoking a conventional cigarette, especially since some vapes do not contain nicotine?
Oh, some e-cigarette industry would always claim they don't contain nicotine, but most contain really nicotine, and the amount of nicotine in each of these products are not the same, unfortunately. It can be as low as 3 to 45 in the free base nicotine. That's actually the old form, the pens up to the mods. But right now, the popular USB device, the pods, it can go as high as 90 milligrams in a very small volume of that canister. You can just imagine a child using that pod device, unknowingly he is consuming a lot of that nicotine. Before, we used to say one pack of cigarette is actually 20 milligrams, and we quantify the health hazard as pack years for cigarettes. It will be very difficult to quantify if we use electronic cigarette. This variation in the amount of nicotine for these various e-cigarette products and device highlights the variation of their addictive potential. Remember, I mentioned earlier that some flavorings are toxic to our body and cells. The cinnamon and the menthol flavorings can cause cellular toxicity and DNA damage. Mind you, it does not mean that food grade flavoring is safe to be inhaled as an aerosol through vapes. The Food and Extracts Manufacturers Association of the United States does not provide regulatory authority to use flavor ingredients in vaping products.
Yes, and although many of these companies claims that their product do not contain nicotine, but who can actually prove this claim? In Indonesia, their products are very loosely regulated. Knowing the nature of e-cigarette companies, they surely will profit more if there are more addictive substances in their products. Not only containing nicotine, e-cigarette also contain formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, and nitrosamine that can cause cancer. Diacetyl, when added to e-cigarette, can cause popcorn lungs, or what we call bronchiolitis obliterans, a type of lung disease. Chemical vapors from vaping can cause damage in oral cavity, oral cancer, and sugar in e-liquids can cause significant dental caries and gum problems like that of tobacco. Not to mention the clear association of asthma exacerbations, allergic rhinitis, and even pneumonia among the young vapers, and even just through exposure to the vape aerosol. There have been reports of malfunctions of vapes that caused their explosion in the face of the user. Nicotine, when ingested by our young, can cause seizures and death at 1 milligram per kilogram of body weight. And last but not least, e-cigarette may cause e-cigarette or vape associated lung injury or EVALI, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome, brought about by the use of vapes, and this causes respiratory failure and lead to early onset chronic lung disease like COPD in the young.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more harms related to vaping, and only time will tell. And e-cigarettes are just here for 2 decades, so that's pretty young compared to smoking. And the vaping playbook is just seemingly looking like the smoking playbook all over again. And there's this parallelism now in marketing where it's targeting the young and the easily influenceable people, with regards to using it, and the health harms we heard from it are just coming from our experts, and there's not much to really work on for now. So hopefully the governments will review this issue, especially in countries where e-cigarettes are not totally banned, or at least where it would be properly regulated to protect the young people. Now, especially recently, where there was a case of an acute e-cigarette vaping associated lung injury in our very own hospital in the Philippines, which was directly linked to vaping in a 22-year-old male. So those should really help in pushing forward for these actions. So that's going to be on us, Anshar and Eldesta. We know that in our region, we have a significant percentage of young population people. So we're very young countries. And that's why the industry is really bringing these products into these countries where we are.
Yeah, I agree. Those diseases sound detrimental. Well, a lot of my friends used to think that the vapor from e-cigarette only contain water with a fragrance, and now I know that it is not true at all. And I know that now it is actually the aerosol that carries dangerous chemicals like that of smoking, as Dr. Rees and Dr. Bernie has mentioned before.
Yeah, sadly, they're not alone in thinking that e-cigarettes are safe. Sadly, so Dr. Bernie and we conducted research in Indonesia, examining 270 high schoolers in three cities, and we asked their perception on vape. Unfortunately, one in five teenagers in our survey believed that the smoke from e-cigarette is safe because they thought it only contained water vapor. And also, one-fourth of teenagers also believe that e-cigarette contains zero nicotine. And of course, these beliefs are totally false.
So, Dr. Ansor, I wonder why the Indonesian government has not banned e-cigarette yet.
Yeah, that's the same question. I have the same question too, and you have no idea. So, because like some government officials in our country even publicly support the development of e-cigarette companies.
Yeah, the Philippines sadly also did not ban e cigarettes, even regulating its sales to ban it from being sold to underage. Well, our neighboring countries, Thailand, Brunei, Cambodia, and Singapore, has totally banned e cigarettes. We are faced with a huge vaping problem given that the industry targets our children and the adolescents. It was reported that we now have more than 15,000 e liquid flavors and brands in the market. While there may be different brand names, a lot of these e cigarette companies are just subsidiaries of the bigger tobacco companies before. A lot of e cigarettes are distributed through physical and online stores or vape shops, which are selling to minors. Mind you, in the Philippines, even small retail stores and convenience stores, they are selling vapes in our country at eye level of the children, beside candies.
Thank you, doctor, for the insightful explanation. Actually, I myself have some friends who are regular vape users, and because I'm curious, so sometimes I try to have a conversation about it with them.
And it's honestly really sad, branching out from that, to read in our news that a month ago there was an ESD factory inauguration that's been sponsored by a lot of top ranking government figures, which really sends the wrong signal to the general population when you see these high figures participating in these events. So, what do our friends from Indonesia think about these e cigarettes?
Oh, well, in my opinion, my friends who vape are trying to fit in because there are lots of cool kids around them who use vape. And I feel that e-cigarettes sort of boost their confidence and help them to feel like they belong.
Yeah, it has been known that just like their predecessors, the cigarette companies, e-cigarette companies will often exploit the struggle of young people to fit in and to make sense of the world.
So that's why that's actually what you mean by them targeting children and adolescents.
Yeah, precisely. They make it look like by consuming e-cigarettes, young people will be seen as cool, talented, popular, and inspiring among their peers, which is of course misguiding. And also, how can you reach your fullest potential when your mind is clouded by nicotine addiction?
Yeah, I think you're right. I could also recall that my friend who are e-cigarette users mentioned a lot about vape being a stress reliever. They claim that vape could puff their problems away, and Actually, I did a little digging about this matter in the internet, and I know right away that it is not true at all. But I really want to hear the experts' take on it in this podcast. So, Dr. Bernie and Dr. Reese, maybe. So, what's your opinion regarding the effect of e-cigarette on stress or mental health?
Well, Aldous, your observation is quite accurate. In our survey, 1 in 10 teenagers even believe that the e-cigarette can improve their mental health. And also, almost 1 in 5 young people believed that vaping does not cause addiction. This is untrue. Yeah, nicotine is a pleasure-inducing chemical that makes our brain have that, oh, I guess now I'm good kind of feeling. And obviously, these sensations can appear to have a positive effect on stress. However, it is important to note that nicotine use does not alleviate stress in the long term and instead can trap the users in a cycle of nicotine addictions. Vapers experience irritability, anxiety, and depressions when they have not smoked for a while also.
I see. So, what you're saying is it's true that there might be an immediate mood shift after smoking e-cigarette, but this effect is temporary and it's because of the nicotine. So, in other words, the brain will forget how to be happy without nicotine. Is it true?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, doctor, when I try to convince my friend to stop using e-cigarette, they always say, well, it's better for me to vape than to smoke. So, sometimes it makes me confused as to how to respond to that.
Funny that you say that actually, because I also hear from a lot of my friend groups or like friends of friends that they say by using e-cigarettes it will help them quit smoking since there's no combustion involved. It's just plain heating of e-liquid like water. So is vaping really safer than smoking?
Well, I understand why this can be tricky and confusing, but it is normal to feel like that since it is actually tactic used by the e-cigarette companies to market their products. In fact, in our survey, we found that 1/3 of teenagers thought that compared to smoking, vapors is safer, which is totally wrong. By saying we are safer than conventional cigarette, e-cigarette companies are hoping to increase their sales.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Bernie. I actually have an example. So, in Indonesia, there was a popular online article made by a large e-cigarette website in 2020 who actually had the audacity to quote the Indonesian Pediatric Association. And in this article, they made it so that it looks like the e-cigarette company is fighting conventional cigarette. And since they quoted Indonesian pediatricians, it sounded like this article was supported by doctors, which will, of course, confuse youth. And one more thing, we also observe that in the social media accounts that sell e-cigarette, they often quote the Indonesian Ministry of Health article about the dangers of smoking. So it's actually an insidious tactic that is designed to support their claim of safety by comparing their safety to the safety of conventional cigarette.
Whoa, that's such an interesting fact. I haven't heard about it before. I think more people should hear about it. By the way, doctor, I'm curious as in how this e-cigarette advertisement situation is regulated in Philippines. Is it the same with what's happening in Indonesia?
Look at this tagline: Unsmoke your world, giving you a better choice. And now they have this movement, creating a smoke free world. They sound like health advocate, but it's a tobacco industry giant behind this well crafted statement. It's a smokescreen, I may say. And they even crafted the smoking cessation strategy. Well, unfortunately, to be directed to these ESDs, and that's e cigarettes, and that of the heated tobacco products. And you know what? During the legislation, we pushed for the age of access to age 21. The vape industry is telling that we are favoring the tobacco industry since smoking is allowed at 18. Well, in fact, we just want to change to start from the vape at age 21 and revisit the laws on smoking thereafter to make it also 21.
I didn't know they could literally twist everything to make it look like
Yes.
we're the bad guy and they're the good guy. And I think it's so
Yes.
horrible. I think such deceitful tactics should be exposed to more people.
Yeah, I want to add. Have shown that the e-cigarette can serve as a getaway substance into consuming other types of dangerous substances. In other words, e-cigarette use may open the gate for the use of the other drugs, including conventional cigarettes, cannabis, opioids, etc. So this is further proof that comparing the safety of e-cigarette versus conventional cigarettes is a bit nonsensical. So since vaping will increase the risk of smoking initiation anyway, the World Health Organization has sounded an alarm already back in July 2021 that most of the young vapers are never smokers. And sad to say, studies have shown that in a year, there is 50% risk that they can be smokers or worse, become dual smokers. So this is harm introduction to our young.
Listening to what we've been talking about so far, it makes a lot of sense. And one common thing I've noticed is that they are very aggressive with their use of social media and the online platform now. And it's been mentioned a lot in our talk. So, would you kindly explain to us the deeper role of social media in marketing e cigarettes?
Yeah, if I may add, social media presents a lot of new challenges for us. In the past, it was easier to regulate advertisement that was announced through television, newspapers, and the radio. But now it is harder. Influencers and celebrities might endorse these e-cigarette companies independently and without disclosing it to the audience. The rules regarding these matters are still loose, especially in developing countries like Indonesia.
Yeah, and personally speaking, it sounds very grim. And in our country, there is a Republic Act 11900, which allows for online ads, unfortunately, and it doesn't have any regulations with regards to advertising these addictive substances like e-cigarettes and vaping. And that's where our youth is right now. So I would like to know if there's any programs that are being done right now to tackle these.
Well, in Indonesia, progress is slow, but many efforts are done. And we are currently developing strategies to equip teenagers to go against the advertisement and think critically. But of course, these methods cannot work without the cooperation with the teenagers. That's where you guys come in.
I do agree, Doc. Well, I used to follow this mega influencer, and I observed that their contents are actually quite funny and they're relatable things that happen in daily life. But funnily enough, in many of the posts, an e-cigarette device occupies a space in their post. So it's a bit confusing for me. That is why I decided to unfollow her, because I don't want such contents to slip into my subconscious mind.
Yeah, and I understand that because I admit we all have this tendency to imitate someone we look up to or idolize or someone we identify with. So, as the audience, we also have to be more careful in choosing which influencers and contents we are going to follow and also like do our own efforts to educate ourselves on these topics so that we're more aware of what we are watching.
Yes. And who can ensure that an e-cigarette company is not endorsing any influencers? In our program, we try to give examples to the teenagers. We give them examples of shows, anime, K-pop shows that may be endorsed by big tobacco companies. These companies spend a large sum of money to market their products. The usage of bright colors, appealing words, and youthful music make it so much more hypnotizing. In fact, in our study, about 7 out of 10 teenagers felt enticed by an e-cigarette advertisement we showed them. Young people respond very positively when we try to reveal about the marketing strategies of tobacco and e-cigarette companies. They are gripped with interest and shock. Our program is still under development, but it is promising. So you guys love critical thinking and are more open to change, we feel. So we hope to use this empower them to stop being victims of e-cigarette companies.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bernie, from your explanation, it's so clear that social media is a powerful tool that is weaponized by the companies to boost their sales. So, do you have any tips on what to do these days, especially for us, the youth?
Well, the keys are a well-informed mind and critical thinking. You can start with yourself. Whenever you see a cigarette, e-cigarette appearing in your social media feed, you have to think critically what they are trying to sell to you. And if you have trained yourself to think critically, you can help others, especially your loved ones. Yeah. And when designing your prevention program, our prevention program in high school, we find out that you guys are more than capable of thinking critically on your own feet. Young people do not necessarily like it when someone tells them what to do and what not to do. And we find that a friendly, relatable discussion and just a nudge in the right direction is the perfect first step towards being more critical of e-cigarettes marketing.
Yeah, so the key is really to educate ourselves, then spreading the knowledge to others, which I think I really like. Like looking back a few years when like I was also still a teenager, I find that I would also like conversations where they would actually listen to what I had to say instead of just brushing it off as someone I was young, because it empowers like the self more and it makes you involved in the process and not just a passive receiver of the results. So honestly, I'm really thrilled to hear more about these programs, and I think it's really cool and it should be implemented in a wider scope, especially in the high schools and grade school settings.
Yeah, I agree, Jonathan. Maybe sometime we have to collaborate and help Dr. Bernie and Dr. Ansar in their project. It would be fun, I think. Now, Dr. Riz, if I may ask, do you have anything to add as to what can we do to protect our friends, family, and loved ones from the persuasive message of e-cigarette companies?
Oh, you use the positive power of social media. Create awareness, expose the facts, be the seed of change for the youth group. And I hope this APLCN podcast series will be shared to a lot of the youth groups, the teachers, the parents, our educators. Listen well, like, and please share.
Thank you, Dr. Riz. I agree. Um, I think allowing youth to participate in interactive discussion and to use social media to spread this fact about e-cigarette would really help our endeavors in preventing tobacco use.
Yeah, can I just add that I just want to remind that e-cigarette users are actually victims, and it doesn't help at all to stigmatize them. And a lot of them actually want to stop, but don't know how. But there are so many resources on the internet you can refer to, and there are so many organizations that you can ask for help to hopefully break free from tobacco and nicotine. So, yeah, I agree. Start with your loved ones.
Okay, those are very valuable advice that you give to us, doctors. Thank you very much. Actually, there are so many important topics left uncovered, but unfortunately, time is running out, so let's wrap up. All right, guys. So now we know that e-cigarette is as harmful as traditional cigarette. Both contain nicotine, and both are highly addictive and can harm the brain. We should also highlight that adolescents' brain is still developing, hence youth are more vulnerable to nicotine addiction compared to adults. And don't forget, e-cigarette could also open the gate for the use of cannabis, alcohol, and even traditional cigarette. The notion that e-cigarette is safe, e-cigarette could alleviate stress and anxiety are basically just myths created by e-cigarette companies to allure us to youth. That is why we have to be more critical, especially when seeing ads in social media, because social media like TikTok or Instagram is basically the weapon used by e-cigarette companies to help their business flourish. Tackling this problem is not as easy as it may seem, but every ounce of effort matters.
Yeah, so we have to start now. And of course, one way of doing this is by educating ourselves. Then we can help our closest loved ones first to break free from e-cigarettes, and then other means of tobacco or nicotine use, and then maybe we could branch out after that. Let's start small, but every effort matters. So with this, we'd like to thank Dr. Riz, Dr. Bernie, Dr. Anshor, and Eldesta for spending time with us today, unwrapping the confusion and the myths around e-cigarettes, and hopefully all of us and our loved ones can break free from this endless cycle and grip of e-cigarettes, tobacco, and nicotine. And we'd like to see you in our next episodes. So keep following this APLCN podcast series. So thank you for listening to this episode, and bye-bye.